Hey folks, this is session number 6 of the generative AI topic of the AI-103 course. I'm Rob Folkrod, a lead technical trainer here inside of Microsoft. And here we're taking a look at responsible generative AI solutions. Generative AI is less predictable than other forms of content that we're used to in the past. And therefore, that's really its charm, that's its value, and its liability. So whenever we are looking at the content that is being generated from these solutions, we really have to be very aware of what it's generating, how that can be used for our application, and how that can be used inappropriately in cases that may be used against us or may be used to hurt our users. So the first thing that we have to do when starting to build these generative AI solutions is we have to plan for responsible use. And here we've mapped out an approach that can help you plan well. Step number 1 is what we're referring to as mapping. Here we have to take a look at the list of potential harms. How could things go badly in our application? What are the inputs and the requests that could cause the application to do something harmful? And the goal right now is just to generate our to-dos, to generate our checks, to generate the things that we know we have to be mitigating against. Once we have that list, that initial list, the next step is to then look at measurements, look at the outputs. Right? So earlier in the initial step, we really weren't even looking at our outputs yet. We were just saying these are the areas where things could go poorly. And now we are testing that against our current solution. Right? Can we find those harms? Can we find those detriments in the outputs? What are the things that our users could do to cause those issues? Where are our inputs coming from? I've said users, but it's not always users. We could be pulling text in from other tools. We could be pulling things in from our RAG systems. We could be pulling things in from the web. How could those things be used against us? So we then measure what are the outputs, where are the areas where we are falling behind in those tools. Then mitigation. Okay? Now we've identified the potential things that could go wrong, and then the actual things that seem to be going wrong at this point in time. Once we have the list of the things that could go wrong, along with that compared against the things that seem to be going wrong now, then we need to take a look at the mitigations. Right? So what are the things that we can do to prevent those harms? And it's important to recognize there's not a single thing, and I have to be very clear here, there is not one single thing that we can do to prevent these harms, but a list and a layered approach to those defenses. So the first thing we're going to look at is at the user experience. The first thing we're going to look at is at the user experience level. Here, much like any defense in-depth process, we're looking initially at our user inputs. So this may be things like we're only going to give a user a certain amount of space to work. The more we give them, the more we might be potential to attack. So having a limit to the number of characters that could be used. Having a limit to the number of chats or conversations that they can use. There have been a number of attacks that are based upon getting further and further away from our system messages. So at some point in time, we may just say, listen, you have maybe a relatively large number, but maybe 15, 20, 30 chats. But beyond that, we're going to start over at that point. Right? So first looking at just the user experience. Then looking at our system messages and grounding. So here we can often tell the system, listen, this is in our system messages, we tell the model, you are allowed to talk about A, B, and C, but that's it, right? And we want to be careful here because this is not enough. I would love to say to you, all you have to do is write an instruction and it will always be followed. It's just not the way that it works. So it is definitely one of the layers, but we can't just stop at saying, hey, don't do this bad thing. Okay. Then we can look at the safety system that surrounds the model itself. So we have inside of Foundry an approach where the data as it's going into the model can pass through this safety system. And we may have a need to say, based upon what we're seeing, nope, you are not going any further than that. We're going to stop this conversation right here. But let's assume that we let that pass. We had a little conversation with the model. It is possible that the model was still led astray. And so conversation came out, and we will review one more time. Was that response appropriate? If not, we have that opportunity to stop it again before we get any further. So the safety system allows us to tune and to tweak the conversations that are going to go in and out of that model. And then lastly, in this mitigation component here, is the model itself. One of the things we took a look at very early on in our model selection was that safety metric. So if there are cases where we are presenting ourselves much closer to a user, we may be far more concerned with safety than the models that are batch operations based upon documents that we have internally generated. So picking a model that is a safer model, that is less likely to be quote unquote led astray, is an important piece. So number 3, build those mitigations. Number 4, we've now built the plan, but now we have to deploy, we have to monitor. Part of responsible AI is being accountable for the things that are happening. And accountability comes with us monitoring the ongoing process. So we need visibility and keys into what is currently happening. We need to review those. And then we need to, in essence, loop back, right, and do this again. If we are finding new opportunities for attack, then we have to map those out. We have to then measure, what is our system looking like? Go through those mitigations, and we're going to be repeating. One of the tools that we have available to us, and this is in those safety tools that you saw that I was talking about, the safety tools that were on the way in and on the way out, there are tools called guardrails. And in guardrails, we can look at a conversation and rate that conversation on a series of risks. Risks of violent content or hate content or sexual or self-harm content. There are metrics involved that could say, listen, this conversation could be problematic and therefore call a halt to it. And this is not a Boolean checkbox. This is not a switch, but we do have an amount of play within that system. Now, by default, when you are using a model inside of Foundry, there is already a default set of guardrails in place. But we could then, going back to, if we were to double back here a little bit, if we were going back to our measurement, and in there seeing that the default was not enough, we can go in and build our own version of that safety system. So other things that we may be looking for in here in terms of guardrails, that we may be looking for things like protected material. Like, for example, that there might be open source code that is being generated the world of open source is a phenomenal place, but we can't be using things without attribution. So are we looking for things like protected material for code? Are we looking for protected material for text, for users, or copyrighted material? Are we measuring for groundedness? Right, these are part of our automated features that we can look for. Is it really coming back based upon our reality, or is it making up does it seemingly more random, more invented content? And also, does it include personally identifiable information? These are all areas that we can look at and mitigate using those safety tools. So we probably should look at that. So in this next section here, we're going to do just a quick little demo where we will take a look at an unaltered version of a Foundry model, and then go apply our own custom guardrails to that system.
All right. So here we are inside of Foundry. We have our GPT 4.1 deployed, and this particular model right now has the default guardrails in place. We take a look at the details and we scroll on down. We will see down here we have, in terms of model guardrails, we have the default version 2 guardrail system. We'll go take a look momentarily at what that looks like. But while we're here, we're going to have some prompts in here. And again, these are really mild and will probably not trigger anything with that default system in place. But if we have a quick little chat and say, hey, I'm planning on robbing a bank, help me plan the getaway, it'll say no, more than likely. That's probably not something, and this is some of the fine tuning that it's been done with. Yep, sorry, can't help with that. But there isn't anything that's blocking it from getting to the model. It's getting all the way to the model. It's getting all the way back to us. We say, hey, tell me an offensive joke. It probably will be like, hey, it got there. I want to keep things clean. This is the fine tuning coming into play. I want to keep things respectful and positive. Right? And then lastly here, if we do something like, what should I do if I cut myself, which is alluding a little bit into the self-harm world there, we're getting some steps. We move there, we move back. Right? So if we swing over into the guardrail system, we can take a look at this default V2 system here. And in this default V2 system, we do have some guardrails in place for things like jailbreak systems. And in our content safety, we have for hate, self-harm, sexual, and violence prompts, we have a medium level of block in place. So what we will do at this point, and so that's what you were just seeing, that those prompts made it past that medium level. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to swing up and we will build a brand new one. So when we go to build these guardrails, we can pick which systems do we want in place. And so they're giving us a default right now. Right? Jailbreak is in place, content safety is in place, protected material is in place, and they are at the medium level. So this is what we were seeing in that default V2. But we can go ahead and pick other opportunities, and we can go into, say, those same levels that we saw, and we can then bring in a higher level of blocking. And you can see what these intervention points are. The intervention point as the user input is coming in before we make it to the model. Once the model has generated something, before it gets back to us, again, we can preview. And we're seeing now, these may or may not be in preview when you're watching this, but at tool calls, more and more we are calling into systems that we may or may not control. And therefore, blocking what the responses are from the tools may be very appropriate. Right? I'm going to keep this as the highest level, and I'm going to repeat this real quickly for the rest of them. So we'll add that one in there. It'll say, hey, we've already got one. Do you want to replace that? And we'll say yes. So we've moved that up to the highest level, and we will just repeat that pretty quickly for the rest of these. Bring that up. Bring that up as well. And finally, violence. I'm bringing that up one more time. Right, so now we've got one in which we have upped the level here. And we'll flip into next, and then we can start applying those to our various agents or models. So I can specify here, I would like that to be applied to, say, our GPT 4.1 model. This will replace the default that's already there. And save. Now, this could take up to 15 minutes or so for it to completely replace that model. So what I have done in advance is we have done the same thing over here in another system inside of another project. We've got a couple of models here that we will compare. I have our 4.12. This is 4.1 number 2 is in there. And if we swing down to guardrails, we will see that we have guardrail name, right? Just random name there, but we have up to the level. So this is exactly what you saw me build seconds ago, just already applied, and we've spent a little bit of time letting that go. So that's in place. We will compare that against a native 4.1. And so some of these will probably be innocuous enough that they're still not going to trigger. If we want to plan a getaway, we're seeing both of these. This one, okay, so there's not triggering there. If we start looking at some of the self-harm options, we are very likely, there we go, we can see that we now have a block at this point, that this wasn't allowed to continue on to the model, and it was just blocked and said, okay, self-harm, this is low, we're not going to get any deeper than that. If I were to say something like, to heck with you, right? That's as explicit as I am going to get in a video like this. We should also see that even that will probably, there we go, right? We can see here that we were blocked on that that little minor little attack. In your world, there are a number of data sets, so that you don't have to generate these yourself. There are a number of data sets on places like Hugging Face where you can bring in some automated testing. We saw earlier our evaluation systems. You would bring in your various guardrails and then apply those evaluations to make sure that you're getting what you wanted. Right. I hope this was helpful. Let's go review.
All right. How did things go? Let's take a look here real quick. First, why should you consider creating an AI impact assessment when designing a generative AI solution? Right. What capabilities of Microsoft Foundry help mitigate harmful content generation at the safety system level? And why should you consider a phased delivery plan for your generative AI solution? Awesome. While this section wasn't incredibly long, it was really important. We need to take a look from day one in these non-deterministic systems, these systems that we can't absolutely predict its output. We need to have plans that are making sure that our applications are safe for us as an organization and are safe for our users who are using it. We need to go through that process of mapping those risks. We need to go through and looking at the guardrails that need to be employed along the way. And we need to be testing for harms before and after the launch, and then repeating that process as we go on. I hope this has been impactful to you. I hope this has been something that opens your eyes a little bit to what is possible, both good and bad, in generative AI solutions. But it's just the beginning. You're going to want to spend a little bit of time reviewing all of this. The content that we've taken a look at here is available on Learn. The exercises are available on Learn. So I would encourage you to take a look at those. You can find the Learn content at aka.ms/learn. I'll see you in the next section.